What if the most talked about moments in film history were not performances at all? What if the camera kept rolling and the line between acting and reality quietly disappeared? Movies sell illusion, but a handful of projects chose something riskier. Halfway through this list, you will realize these were not publicity stunts or accidents. They were choices. And once you hear why those choices were made, some scenes may never feel the same again. Adele Exarchopoulos and Lea Seydoux. Blue is the warmest color. When Blue is the Warmest Color premiered in 2013, it immediately became one of the most talked about films of the decade. Not because of its plot, which was quiet and intimate, but because of how closely it observed connection between its two leads. Adele Exarchopoulos and Lea Seydoux portrayed a relationship that unfolded over years. The film followed emotional growth rather than dramatic milestones. Scenes stretched longer than audiences expected. Conversations drifted. Silence was allowed to breathe. Everything about the film signaled that it wanted to feel lived in, not performed. Director Abdelatif Kechiche pushed for extreme realism. According to both actresses, scenes were filmed repeatedly, sometimes dozens of times, in pursuit of emotional accuracy. That intensity sparked debate almost immediately. Viewers questioned whether what they were seeing was performance or something closer to reality. Exarchopoulos later described the experience as exhausting and overwhelming, saying the process blurred the line between acting and personal exposure. Seydoux echoed that sentiment in separate interviews, explaining that the lack of emotional distance made filming deeply uncomfortable at times. Neither actress framed the work as easy or glamorous. The controversy grew not from spectacle, but from duration. Moments lingered. The camera did not look away. That persistence made audiences uneasy. Critics debated whether the film captured authenticity or demanded too much from its performers. Despite the discussion, the film earned major recognition, including top honors at Cannes, shared by both actresses. That decision alone fueled further debate. Some praised the performances as fearless. Others questioned the cost of achieving such realism. What makes this entry significant is not confirmation or denial. It is the conversation it sparked about power, trust, hours, and responsibility behind the camera. The actress's later reflections shifted attention away from the scenes themselves and toward the process that created them. Blue is the Warmest Color remains a landmark because it forced the industry to confront a difficult question. When realism feels overwhelming, who decides when enough is enough? Chloe Sevigny and Vincent Gallo. The Brown Bunny. When The Brown Bunny appeared at Cannes in 2003, the reaction was immediate and brutal. Boos filled the room. Critics walked out. Reviewers sharpened their knives. But none of that fury was about the story itself. It was about one moment that refused to fade. The film followed a quiet, drifting man traveling across America, weighed down by memory and regret. For most of its runtime, almost nothing happens. Long drives, empty spaces. Silence then, near the end, Chloe Sevigny appears, and the tone shifts completely. What unfolds is a single, uninterrupted moment of intimacy between Sevigny and director-star Vincent Gallo. According to both actors, nothing was staged. No substitutions. No visual tricks. It was real connection, captured plainly, without music or softening edits. Sevigny was already known for choosing difficult roles. She did not shy away from uncomfortable material. At the time, she defended the scene as part of a creative partnership, saying she trusted Gallo's vision and believed the moment belonged emotionally within the story. She later admitted she underestimated how intense the public response would be. The backlash was severe. The film was labeled extreme. Gallo famously clashed with critics in public, turning the release into a media spectacle. However, yet something unexpected happened. After a re-edit, one of the harshest critics reversed his opinion, calling the revised version thoughtful and deeply personal. What remained controversial was not the act itself, but the question behind it. How much vulnerability is too much? At what point does honesty become exposure? Sevigny later said the experience taught her how unforgiving the public could be when an actress controls her own boundaries. Yet she never disowned the decision. Her career continued, strong and respected, while the film settled into a strange place in cinema history. The Brown Bunny did not become beloved, it became debated, and sometimes that is more powerful. It stands as a reminder that one quiet scene can overshadow an entire film and permanently change how an audience looks at authenticity on screen. Ida Christophopoulos and co-stars, Stranger by the Lake. Stranger by the Lake does not ease you into its world. It drops you there and refuses to explain itself. Released in 2013, the French film takes place almost entirely beside a quiet lake. The setting is peaceful, sunlight glints off water, trees sway gently, and beneath that calm surface, something unsettling waits. The story centers on a group of men who gather regularly at the same spot, day after day. Conversations repeat, patterns form, then someone disappears, and later something far worse is quietly confirmed. Yet life at the lake continues almost unchanged. Christophe Pau plays a man whose presence feels magnetic and dangerous at the same time. His character draws others in, even when fear should push them away. The film uses long takes and still framing, forcing viewers to sit with discomfort rather than escape it. What set the film apart was its refusal to rely on suggestion. Many moments of closeness were not simulated. Director Alain Guiraudie insisted on realism to remove any emotional distance between audience and characters. There were no shortcuts, no visual shields. This decision divided viewers. Some praised the film for its honesty and courage. Others felt unsettled by how calmly it presented desire alongside danger. The contrast was deliberate. The film wanted viewers to question why people ignore warning signs when connection feels irresistible. Critics embraced it. The film won major awards and was praised for blending tension, intimacy, and quiet dread into something unforgettable. Pau later spoke about how emotionally demanding the role was, describing the experience as draining rather than thrilling. What makes Stranger by the Lake powerful is not shock. It is stillness. The camera does not judge. It simply observes. That lack of commentary forces viewers to wrestle with their own reactions. The film does not offer closure. It ends in darkness, uncertainty hanging in the air. And long after it finishes, one question lingers. When realism removes the safety of fiction, are we prepared to face what remains? Anna Paquin and Joe Manganiello. True Blood. By the time True Blood reached its later seasons, the show had already built a reputation for pushing limits. It was bold, emotional, and unafraid of intensity. But one particular moment sent viewers into full debate mode, and it had nothing to do with special effects or dramatic twists. Anna Paquin's character had shared chemistry with many characters over the years, but when her storyline intersected with Joe Manganiello's towering presence, something shifted. Their scenes felt different, not louder, not exaggerated, just startlingly natural. What fueled speculation was not just what appeared on screen, but who was behind the camera. Paquin's real-life partner, Stephen Moyer, directed the episode. That detail alone made viewers lean in closer. Every glance, every pause, every movement felt unfiltered. Fans began asking the same question over and over. Was this still performance, or had something crossed into reality? Neither Paquin nor Manganiello ever confirmed anything specific, and that silence only kept the discussion alive. Paquin joked in interviews about how unusual the situation was, but she never dismissed the rumors outright. Moyer, meanwhile, leaned into humor, saying trust was the foundation of both his marriage and his work. What made this case unique was consent layered on top of trust, layered on top of storytelling. The set was controlled, the performers were comfortable, and the director understood the emotional stakes better than anyone watching from home. Unlike many entries on this list, there was no public fallout, no regrets shared years later, no careers derailed. The moment simply exists as one of those scenes that made viewers pause and question how much realism they were witnessing. True Blood thrived on blurred lines, fantasy and humanity, desire and danger. This scene fit that identity perfectly. Whether anything beyond performance happened almost becomes secondary. What matters is that the audience believed it. And sometimes, belief is the most powerful illusion cinema can create. Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton, Monsters Ball. Monsters Ball is remembered for many reasons. Awards, heavy themes, emotional weight. But one moment remains impossible to separate from the film's legacy. Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton portrayed two people shattered by loss, drawn together not by romance, but by desperation. Their connection was not polished. It was raw, uneven, and uncomfortable. And when their closeness unfolded on screen, audiences felt like witnesses rather than viewers. The scene was filmed without music, without soft lighting, without distance. It felt intrusive in a way few mainstream films dared at the time. Almost immediately, whispers began. Had the actors gone further than scripted? Neither Berry nor Thornton ever confirmed such claims, but they also did not shut them down. Berry later explained she agreed to the scene only if vulnerability was shared equally. Thornton confirmed they abandoned strict choreography, choosing instead to let emotion guide the moment. The director later said the scene worked because the actors trusted each other completely. The set was cleared. The atmosphere was focused. What mattered was emotional truth, not comfort. Early versions of the film reportedly included even more intensity, later trimmed to meet release standards. Those who saw the original cut described it as overwhelming rather than dramatic. What sets this entry apart is not whether anything crossed a boundary, it is how convincingly the boundary disappeared. When the scene does not invite admiration, it invites reflection. It asks whether storytelling should ever make us feel like we are watching something private. Berry's performance earned historic recognition, while Thornton's role became one of his most discussed. The scene did not define their careers, but it followed them, resurfacing every time the film is mentioned. Monsters Ball reminds us that realism does not always feel brave in the moment. Sometimes it feels unsettling, and sometimes that discomfort is exactly the point. Christine DeBelle and Alan Novak, Alice in Wonderland. Christine DeBelle thought she was signing up for something playful. Slightly strange, maybe bold for its time, but still rooted in fantasy. What she stepped into instead became one of the most unusual chapters in film history. Heck, this version of Alice in Wonderland was released in 1976 and marketed as an adult musical twist on a familiar story. Bright sets, catchy songs, a surreal tone. But behind that playful surface, the production quietly crossed lines most films never approached. DeBelle played Alice with an earnest, wide-eyed quality that felt almost too innocent for what the film became. Alan Novak portrayed the White Rabbit, guiding her through a world that grew increasingly uncomfortable. Several scenes were filmed without illusion or substitution. According to later accounts, moments meant to suggest closeness were not acted at all. What shocked many viewers later was DeBelle's own reaction. She stated in interviews that she was not fully informed about how far the film would go. However, the gap between expectation and reality created a lasting unease around the project. Despite controversy, the film performed extremely well financially. That success only deepened debate. Was it misunderstood art, clever provocation, or something else entirely? Even major critics struggled to categorize it. Some praised its odd charm, others questioned whether boundaries had been crossed without clarity. DeBelle herself went on to have a steady career, but this film followed her like a shadow. What makes this entry linger is not outrage, it is confusion, a sense that something slipped through the cracks of oversight and became a permanent artifact. Alice in Wonderland remains a reminder that context matters, and when performers are not fully prepared, realism can become exploitation without intention. Shia LaBeouf and Stacey Martin, Nymphomaniac. Few filmmakers are as committed to discomfort as Lars von Trier. When Nymphomaniac was announced, expectations were already intense. The film promised honesty without filters, and for some cast members, that promise became very real. Originally, the production planned to rely on digital effects and stand-ins to create the illusion of closeness. That approach would have kept a clear line between performance and reality, but two actors chose a different path. Shia LaBeouf and Stacey Martin pushed for authenticity. They wanted the moments to feel lived in, not manufactured. According to production statements, what appears on screen in several scenes was not created through visual tricks. LaBeouf was vocal about his approach. He spoke about rejecting shortcuts and committing fully to the role. Martin, newer to the industry at the time, later explained that the experience was highly controlled and carefully discussed, even if the result appeared spontaneous. The public response was divided. Some praised the film's honesty, others questioned whether such realism was necessary. The debate quickly shifted from the story itself to the ethics of how it was made. What makes this case different is transparency. The director and actors did not hide their choices. They defended them openly. The film became less about shock and more about intention. Nymphomaniac did not aim to comfort its audience. It aimed to confront them. And whether viewers agreed with the methods or not, the result forced a larger conversation about where performance ends and lived experience begins. Lauren Lee Smith and Eric Balfour, Lie With Me. A Lie With Me arrived quietly in 2005, without blockbuster marketing or controversy-driven hype. But those who watched it quickly realized it was doing something very different. The film followed a relationship defined by honesty, vulnerability, and emotional exposure. Lauren Lee Smith and Eric Balfour portrayed two people who refused to hide from each other. The tone was intimate, conversational, and stripped of fantasy. Several scenes were filmed without simulation. The director emphasized trust and communication above all else. Sets were closed. Crew presence was minimal. What mattered was comfort and consent. Smith later explained that the project was about realism, not provocation. She described the experience as emotionally demanding rather than thrilling. Balfour echoed that sentiment, saying the closeness required mutual respect and careful boundaries. The film did not generate outrage. Instead, it generated quiet discussion. Critics noted how natural the performances felt, how little distance existed between the characters and the audience. What makes Lie With Me stand out is its softness. There is no shock factor, no attempt to overwhelm, just two people navigating closeness without hiding behind cinematic tricks. In a list filled with controversy, this entry feels almost gentle, and that gentleness might be its most radical quality. It suggests that realism does not always need spectacle to be powerful. Sienna Miller and Hayden Christensen, Factory Girl. Factory Girl was meant to be a portrait of a fragile era, a young woman pulled into fame, excess, and emotional confusion. Sienna Miller stepped into the role of Edie Sedgwick with full commitment, while Hayden Christensen portrayed a quiet, conflicted presence in her life. On paper, it was a character study. On screen, it sparked years of speculation. From the moment the film was released, viewers noticed something different about the closeness between the two leads. Their scenes did not feel choreographed. They felt drained, exhausted, almost too sincere. That realism triggered rumors that the boundary between performance and reality may have blurred. Miller addressed the experience carefully in interviews. She spoke about how emotionally demanding the role was and how physically tiring those scenes became. She emphasized that the weight audiences felt came from acting, not from crossing lines. Christensen stayed quieter, rarely engaging with the speculation directly. Behind the scenes, however, stories circulated. Some claimed the rumors were allowed to spread intentionally, not by the production, but by outside parties eager to redirect attention away from other ongoing gossips surrounding the cast. Whether true or not, the whispers became part of the film's identity. What makes Factory Girl unique is uncertainty. There is no confirmation, no denial strong enough to end the discussion. The film exists in a gray space where perception matters more than facts. Critics were divided on the movie itself, but nearly all agreed on one thing. The emotional closeness felt uncomfortably real. That discomfort lingered longer than the plot. In the end, Factory Girl reminds us that sometimes belief is stronger than proof. When performances feel too convincing, audiences begin searching for answers beyond the screen. And once that door opens, it rarely closes. Robert Pattinson, Little Ashes. Before global fame reshaped his career, Robert Pattinson made a choice that still surprises people who discover it years later. Little Ashes was a quiet biographical film centered on art, repression, and identity. It was never designed to reach a wide audience or generate headlines. It existed on the margins, aimed at viewers willing to sit with discomfort rather than spectacle. And yet one moment ensured it would never be forgotten. Pattinson portrayed a young Salvador Dali at a time when the artist was wrestling with inner conflict and emotional restraint. The performance demanded subtlety rather than dramatics. Long silences carried more weight than dialogue. The character lived in tension, a caught between admiration, fear, and self-denial. To convey that inner struggle, the script included a deeply personal moment that required complete vulnerability. Instead of relying on suggestion or cinematic distance, Pattinson chose authenticity. He later confirmed openly that the moment was real. There was no illusion, no substitution, no protective barrier between the actor and the camera. He even joked afterward that his most private expression would now exist permanently on film, an acknowledgement delivered with dry humor rather than regret. What stands out is not the moment itself, but the reasoning behind it. Pattinson explained that the scene could not be convincingly imitated. To him, pretending would have felt dishonest to the character's emotional truth. At the time, he was still early in his career, without the security of long-term success. The decision carried genuine risk, both professionally and personally. The scene was not framed to provoke. There was no dramatic buildup, no heightened music, no attempt to draw attention. It unfolded quietly, almost uncomfortably, which is precisely why many viewers found it difficult to watch. The discomfort came not from excess, but from intimacy. It felt personal in a way cinema rarely allows. Critical response was divided. Some praised the commitment and honesty of the performance. Others questioned whether such realism was necessary to convey the character's struggle. Pattinson himself later admitted the experience was emotionally intense enough to make him briefly reconsider his future as an actor. Little Ashes became a turning point, not in popularity, but in purpose. It signaled that Pattinson would not chase comfort or ease. He would take difficult paths even when the reward was uncertain. That choice continues to define his career long after this small, quiet film faded from view. Kieran O'Brien and Margot Stilley, 9 songs. At the top of this list is the film that quietly changed the conversation forever. 9 Songs was never designed to shock the widest audience. It did not rely on fast pacing or dramatic twists. Instead, it focused on something far more uncomfortable: time, memory, and the ordinary rise and fall of a relationship. What made it historic was how little distance it placed between the viewer and the characters. Kieran O'Brien and Margot Stilley portrayed a couple whose bond unfolds slowly, almost casually. Their closeness does not arrive with dramatic buildup. It appears naturally the way it does in real life. According to both the director and the actors, many moments were captured without performance layers. No illusion, no visual tricks, just presence. Stilley, who had no professional acting background at the time, approached the role with surprising calm. She later explained that the film was about connection, not display. To her, nothing felt extreme. It felt ordinary. That ordinariness is what unsettled audiences the most. O'Brien addressed the reaction with quiet confidence. He argued that the film showed adults behaving the way adults do, without exaggeration or fantasy. The outrage, he suggested, said more about expectations than content. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Critics debated whether the film belonged in theaters at all. Cultural commentators argued over boundaries. Some dismissed it outright. Others defended it as one of the most honest portrayals of a relationship ever captured. What separates 9 Songs from every other entry on this list is its refusal to explain itself. It does not justify its choices. It does not apologize. It simply observes and moves on. Years later, the film is still referenced in discussions about realism, consent, and artistic risk. Not because it is loud, but because it is quiet. And sometimes quiet truth lasts longer than any controversy. So where do you draw the line? Is cinema about illusion or about honesty, even when honesty feels uncomfortable? These moments were not accidents. They were decisions, choices made under bright lights and rolling cameras. Some changed careers, some changed conversations, and some still divide audiences years later. Let me know which one surprised you most, and if you think realism has limits or if that limit keeps moving.